communities and around the state. So on the panel here at the end, we have Nikki. Nikki Schuth Mitchell is the Tribal Extension Agent with the Choctaw Nation Agricultural Outreach Program. She lives near Durant and works with producers, youth, and communities within southeastern Oklahoma. She also runs a flock of 200 sheep on her family farm near Colbert, Oklahoma. So thank you, Nikki, for joining us. Next we have Brittany Huckel. Brittany is a fifth-generation farmer from Hydro, Oklahoma. She graduated from Oklahoma State University in 2007 with a bachelor's degree in agricultural economics. After graduation, she returned home to her family farming operation and sent her pivot. Logan currently live in Yukon, Oklahoma, while Logan finishes up a second bachelor's degree in nursing from OU Health Sciences. And then joining us here on this end is Karen Dodson. And Karen is a fourth-generation farmer by marriage. She graduated with an accounting degree from Southwestern Oklahoma State University and married a fourth-generation farmer, Jeff Crable, from Hydro, Oklahoma. They settled on the farm and raised their daughter, Brittany. So if you haven't guessed, there's a mother-daughter here. They raised their daughter, Brittany, on the farm. In 2011, Jeff passed away from brain cancer, leaving the operation to his wife and daughter. Karen has since taken up the reins, making sure the farm stayed intact to allow Brittany to return home. Karen and her husband, Terry Dodson, reside on the farm, and Karen continues to help manage the farm and irrigation business. So we welcome you ladies up here today. Joining us to moderate the panel will be Dr. Cheryl DeBeast. Dr. DeBeast is a professor in the Agricultural Economics Department at Oklahoma State University. She has a 25% extension appointment and 75% teaching appointment. Cheryl was raised on a dairy farm in Northwest Indiana. She and her husband Eric, who is also a professor in the Agricultural Economics Department, currently reside north of Morrison, Oklahoma, where they have a small cow-calf operation. Please help me welcome Cheryl.
Thank you, Sarah. And by the way, before we go any further, I think all of you know out there how this actually runs, and it's because we have someone so phenomenal behind the scenes, up here sometimes, but I want to thank Sarah for all of her hard work in this, because this would not happen without her. I know those things usually happen at the end, but Sarah's at the end, and so she would never thank herself, so I wanted to go ahead and do that now. So first off, we're going to get right into this and allow each one of the ladies, if you wanted to say a little bit more about yourself in background or something like that. And I do have to say, I think Brittany, I will say, graduated in 2017, and she had to be one of the most outstanding students, TAs. She was a TA for me. She also, if you may happen to recognize her, she was our Oklahoma State homecoming queen last year. And that was really great to have a fifth-generation farmer as the homecoming queen at Oklahoma State University. So I know she's probably horribly embarrassed that I'm saying this, but it's just great to know that agriculture has such foundational roots at Oklahoma State, and that everyone was able to look at her and say, wow, this is great. She's our homecoming queen. So I do want to get right into this and ask each one of you, as a woman in ag, what are some challenges you have overcome? What lessons have you learned along the way? Karen, you can start us off.
I guess to start with, challenges along the way. Sometimes you don't know the answer, but you just have to ask and get past that fear of, I don't know what I'm talking about, or I don't understand, but just to be able to go ahead and ask. And usually they're willing to share once they know they have the answer, and they, you're willing learner, willing student, they'll teach you what you need to know and to be able to ask questions. So I think that's probably a challenge, just to get past that fear of, I may not know what they're asking, or I may not know as much as somebody else.
I guess I'm going to say that mine is two parts. Both are experiences that have happened in the last month or so. One, I went to a parts store and was getting something. The parts guy asked me what I needed. I told him. He said, "Did so-and-so send you with a credit card?" And I'm like, well, I sent myself with a credit card because I am the person who's running the business. But sometimes there's those perceptions that we might not know as much as women. We might not have the same power that our husbands have, and my husband's not on the farm. He's looking at a nursing career, being in healthcare. So sometimes there's that perception that we don't quite know what's going on, but really credit card's in my name and I can sign for it, and I'm the one making the decisions. The second part is my husband and I went to the farm auction in kind of our hometown on Tuesday, and I asked him to meet me in the lobby so that we could grab lunch, because I had went to grab cash out of the pickup, and I told him just meet me there. Well, when he met me in the lobby, I was standing in line for the bathroom. And we were standing there visiting, and a few minutes rolled by, and he goes, "Are we not gone yet?" I'm like, "No, there's a line." "Oh, okay." So then we keep visiting. He goes, "Brett, it's been like 10 minutes. And I'm like, "It's a one-person bathroom." And he was like, "But the guy's bathroom has 3 stalls. Why have you not been in yet?" I'm like, because women don't go and do those things. Sometimes it's the really simple things that are just flat out tough when you're a female, because nobody thinks of the logistics of having females go to the bathroom in more than one stall. So anyway.
Well, I guess mine would have to be just really building that credibility. I work with a lot of producers as well as different departments within the Choctaw Nation, and up until I was hired in my position, there really weren't any females in that agriculture part of the tribe. So I really had to really work and build that credibility, and that's something that you do have to build it even if you're male, but I had to work quite a bit harder to get that credibility with those producers and those other members of the agriculture department.
Okay, Nikki, why don't you keep the microphone? We can start with you this time. Mentoring can play an important role in personal and professional development. Did you have a mentor or mentors, and do you mentor others formally or informally? So that's a two-part, so if you can think about that a little bit.
Well, for a mentor, I would say I had kind of more role models. Probably one of my biggest role models would be Dr. Temple Grandin, just because she just continued to persevere. And when people told her she couldn't do it or she wasn't capable of doing it, she put her mind to it, and she really achieved it, and she excelled, and she surpassed everyone's expectations. So I would say I have more of a role model as opposed to a direct mentor on that. But for mentoring others, I guess it would be more informally. And within our department, I feel that several of us, myself and my coworkers, we kind of mentor each other. We excel and we have strengths in different areas, and we learn from one another. And we ask questions to one another, and we, in many ways, train one another to strengthen our weaknesses.
As far as mentors go, I think what you probably all are expecting me to say is this lady sitting right beside me, my mom. But the truth is, the difficult things that I went through in my life, especially in my early life when my father passed away from brain cancer, my mom was going through at the same time with me. So the relationship I have with my mom is more of a we were in it together than a mentorship. I would say my mentors were my dad and my grandpa, who didn't have a boy on the farm to kind of train up and be Generation 5. but they saw me as an equal and said, we'll train her, she's fine, we'll train her, we'll teach her what we know. And I took that as a compliment, that they didn't see me as just a little girl who played with Barbie dolls in the house, that they saw me as someone who could go out and run the tractors and make the production decisions. And so for me, I think it was those guys who saw more than just their granddaughter. They saw someone who was able to run a business and make those decisions. As far as mentoring others, I have plans to do that, but I've only been out of college for a little while, so the people that I mentored were more in a college setting for organizations and things like that I was part of in college. But going forward into being in production agriculture as a female, I see that will be an important place for me to give insight to other young ladies who are coming up and maybe in a similar position to the one I was in.
As far as growing up in an ag community, I did not. I grew up a Baptist preacher's daughter in western Oklahoma, grew up at Granite. So the character traits that I grew up with at home have transferred over into the farming community quite well. That honesty is still valued. The speaker earlier today talked about a handshake and sealing a large deal with just a handshake, and those things still translated. But I came in with an accounting degree and then a CPA. I had an accounting practice, and so I came into farming from a different angle. I came in, I knew the books. That was where I was comfortable. Probably my sister would be my mentor in that. She married a farmer, I married a farmer. She graduated with an accounting degree, I graduated with an accounting degree. So I looked up to her and the qualities I saw in her, wonderful Christian lady. So I took a lot of mentoring from her. And Brittany may not feel like I was her mentor, but you know, you take your kids under your wing and you try to teach them everything you know. And one of the things I tried to tell her was, you can't make all your own mistakes. You've got to learn from what other people, the mistakes they've made. If you have to get up every morning and reinvent the light bulb, you're not going to get a lot done. But if you can learn from even friends, if they're willing to share their story and how they have failed, if you can learn something from that, then you don't have to go through that again. You're going to have plenty of your own mistakes. So somewhat as a child, but then you try and take employees under your wing and teach them things and improve their life in some way.
Thank you. Maybe we'll start with Brittany on this one then. So, in what ways would you encourage women in agriculture or small businesses to get involved, either on the farm, in their community, some organizations, and maybe you can mention an organization that had a big impact on your life, or your ability to get more involved and how you're going to continue that.
I think as far as getting involved, we see a lot of problems when we look out, even on Facebook or just in our community. We see a lot of things that go on, and we label those as problems in our mind of things that, man, if we could fix that, that'd be great. And we kind of file those things away and don't really do anything with them. But if we can take those things that we see as problems and start to find other people who see that as a problem and work together to create a solution, that's a whole lot better than just complaining about a problem. In my own community, in the last month or so, I put together a school supply drive. I was driving down the highway and I was thinking, and I had seen on Facebook earlier in the day somebody complaining about having to buy a 30-ounce bottle of Germ-X instead of an 8-ounce bottle of Germ-X for their kid to go back to school. And I realized that even after all of the things that went on with education in Oklahoma in the last 6 months to a year, there's still people who weren't quite ready to make the change in their own little world. They weren't quite ready to shell out the dollars to send school supplies with their kids for whatever reason, and that there was a need there. So I found a group of people in our community who are willing to make that happen and get involved and make somebody else's problem their problem for even just a little bit. And then that came together and we were able to supply the school teachers in Hinton, all 48 of them, with school supply baskets to go back to school with all sorts of different supplies for their classrooms. But really it just comes down to, instead of seeing a problem, filing it away and complaining about it when it's a problem for you, if you make that problem your problem and find other people who see that as a problem. We can work together to find a solution.
I would guess the main way that I encourage women in agriculture to get others more involved or get themselves more involved is talk about agriculture. Something as simple as standing in the line at the grocery store. Start talking to people around you. Ask them, well, do you know where that really comes from? And just really start a conversation. And it doesn't necessarily all have to be online, but that would be good if doing a positive outlook and just kind of maybe posting an ag pact once a week or once a month, but really just talk about it and be sure people are aware where their food comes from, because there's a lot of people that don't know. And there's a lot of kids out there that think chocolate milk comes from brown cows. And if we don't start that conversation and get that information out there, they might get the wrong information, and it might shine a bad light on our industry. Let us, the people in our industry, shine that light. Let us give the information. So pretty much it would be starting the conversation.
As far as encouraging women to get involved in ag, you're here, you're interested in ag. There are lots of good commodity organizations or general farm organizations in Oklahoma, and all of them have a volunteer arm of some kind. They're more than willing to have you volunteer. Just step up to a booth and say, hey, how do I join? They'd love to have you help. We laugh, once you are willing to help, then other people go, oh, hey, she can do this. And there's the opportunities are endless, and then it becomes, and so it's kind of opposite of that question, but there's this word, and I know it's English, and it starts with an N, ends with an O. I've heard other people say it, but I have trouble pronouncing it. So you can get too much going, but there are lots of wonderful opportunities to volunteer, and you just have to choose where your interest lies, and something you can be confident about, something you can enjoy doing, someplace you can make some really good friends and with these farm organizations.
I know that no word is awfully hard for many of us to say, and we feel stretched in a million ways. And so a question that I'm going to add, that they have had some hints up here about what we were going to ask, but one question that popped into my mind is maybe some of you were thinking of some questions. One that I had, if you could go back and there was a decision that you made, that you may at the time have made that decision and thought it was a great decision, and then you went through and thought, oh wow, I learned a real lesson from this. Because Karen, I think you mentioned early on that you're not reinventing the wheel every day. So if you could share one thing that you learned from maybe making, I wouldn't want to call it actually a mistake, but maybe the decision was not your best decision, and then you were able to update it and be flexible. And can you think of something, and I know, give them time, I just threw this on them, but I think it's always great to have women who have really weathered the storm, and we can learn from them. So, do you have something that pops into your mind?
What has popped into my mind is the husband that I had for 20 years died of brain cancer, and the day we had the funeral, I did not think, I wish I worked harder. It was time that you wish you had spent with your loved ones. And then my father-in-law passed away. He was also on the farm, and it's not. There's things I'd love to be able to ask them about the farm going forward. Is like, why is that corral set up that way, or why, some of those questions. But what you really wish is that you could spend more time with them. you have that opportunity. Go home tonight, spend time with the ones you love, because that's really the whole reason we're working. That's part of why we love the ag community, is that we get to be, the great outdoors with our families. And so take advantage of every day.
I guess since we've kind of lost the same people in our lives, mine is similar in that I would ask more of the why questions. I was 13 the day my dad was diagnosed with brain cancer, and that was a really early age to not have someone that I looked up to a lot there to ask questions. And I wish I would have put the pieces together to ask those questions before it was too late. There's a lot of things I wish I would have known about our farm. There's a lot of things I wish I would have known about life in general that I wish I could have asked him. That I didn't really have the time for. Once the word cancer's been said, things start going really, really fast, and it's hard to slow down time enough to get the questions you want answered. Also with that, planning how you want a farm to transition between generations is so important. And sometimes you have time to plan that out, and you can lay out the plans that you have, and it's great. And sometimes you hear one word and then all of a sudden your life has changed. You get one phone call and you don't have time to make a plan. So we were fortunate to have some of those plans made for my dad. There were also things with my grandfather that I wish I would have given him my input so he could have finalized one thing in his will that would have changed things. So making sure that there's time for those little pieces to help your farm transition so you don't have to worry about that part when you lose someone you love.
Probably one of the biggest lessons I've probably learned is don't overextend yourself. You're only one person, you're human, and if you continuously agree to different events or different projects, and then someone comes and asks to add a project and you feel to prove yourself you have to add that. And in the long term, that takes a lot away from your family, and family is extremely important. So my biggest lesson, or wish I could go back and change or tell myself, would be don't overcommit, don't overextend yourself.
Yes, please. And add whatever comments you want to. Sometimes.
Since I've had time to think about
Yes,
it now.
I know.
Sorry. Sometimes you're better off to take the header off.
Okay, we need to
That's a story. One time, I called my grandfather and I asked him if I needed to take the header off to go between fields. Now, in our part of the country, there's canyons, and the road usually goes down between canyons, and there's sides on both sides, and they're rock, and it's great. And I called him and I said, do I need to take the header off, or will it fit? Oh, I've taken that through there, it'll fit. I was like, okay, I'll go measure. So I took the measuring tape, and I was like, I don't think it's gonna fit. So I called him back, and I said, are you sure that that's gonna fit? He goes, Brittany, if you take that header off, you are in trouble. And I said, okay, we're gonna go. So I start down this road, and I see it scrape on one side, and I see it start to scrape on the other side, and I go, it's not gonna fit, and I pull the lever back, and combines don't stop that fast. So it went forward, bent the header, tore it all up, totaled it. It was great. I was bawling. I called my mom. She reminded me that we have Farm Bureau insurance. It was great.
And we take the header off now, every time we change field.
I'm sure there are plenty of, at the time, not so funny stories. We all have our own, but they can be funny later. So are there any additional comments that you would like to add, just nuggets of wisdom, maybe? Thoughts that you've already provided a lot for us, and we are going to open to questions in a little bit, if you have something.
Really know what you're worth, and don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, and just don't shortchange yourself. You know your value, and don't reduce your value.
We wrote a book during the time that my husband had brain cancer, and so in some of the writing, and we go back and learn things and talk about things. One of Jeff, Brittany's fathers, sayings was, never back up when you can move forward. And that was what he told me when he taught me how to pull a trailer, and if you don't ever get it in a place where you gotta back it up, it's a whole lot easier to just pull forward. So that has become something that we just, never back up when you can go forward, and that applies to a lot of things in life. Once you've made a decision, you've got to trust yourself that you made the best decision at the time. Even if you get new facts or the circumstances change, you've got to believe that you made the best decision with the facts that were available, and you've got to trust yourself and be confident in that decision. Now, sometimes you get a chance to change that decision, and sometimes you just have to live with it. But if you know you've done the best that you could with the facts available, you can move forward, don't back up.
So do we have any questions from our audience members? Okay, can you go ahead and stand up and talk loudly, please?
I guess I came here mainly to gain some wisdom. I'm 2 generations removed from farming, from agriculture, and my husband works in healthcare, and I'm starting a farm on my own. And so just any kind of advice, wisdom, anything I could glean from you ladies. Do you have any advice from someone who is 2 generations removed from the farm?
And what type of farm are you?
We're going to be doing mainly just starting small with cattle and pigs and just kind of trying to get my feet wet, see where it goes, see what I can market. But just in general, entering into agriculture and farming again after being removed for 2 generations, do you have any kind of advice for what I'm kind of going on?
I would say since I'm coming back, I'm returning to a farming operation that's already kind of running, which is a headache all of its own at times. But ask questions, find a vet, if you're gonna have livestock, find a vet that you trust and ask them the questions that you don't know. And be upfront with them, say, hey, I'm starting, I have no idea what this is, you're gonna tell me a drug name and I don't know what it does. But just be upfront, and if you find a good vet, they're not gonna care, they'll teach you the things that you need to know. Find the places in your town that you're going to do business and form a relationship with those people, because it makes it a whole lot easier to go to them when times are tough and ask them for help or ask them for advice. It's just easy once you have those relationships built with people who do know what's going on. You don't have to have all the answers. Look at the extension fact sheets that are on OSU's website. It's a great source of information, and nobody has to know that you've looked up a ton of fact sheets on what to do. Nobody has to know that you have no idea what's going on. You may be paddling in the water, but as long as your head's steady up on top, people are going to see that you're doing just fine.
And kind of just to stem off of that, ask a lot of people for advice, and not one person's complete way of doing things will work for you. I've found in my experience taking a little bit from what this person says works for them and taking a little bit from this other person. That way you can create something that truly works for you. But I would get advice from many different sources and then pick and choose what is going to work the best for you.
See, it's a lot like having children. New mothers want to know all of the advice, and the well-seasoned mothers want to always give advice, and it's not always easy to take advice from somebody else. But I'd say each farm comes with its own, doesn't come with an instruction manual. You're going to have to learn it, and you will become the expert on your farm, what's going to work and what won't. But ask questions. And one thing about the ag industry, we're not all competitors. Because of the commodity situation, when we sell things, I'm not in competition with my neighbor on who gets the best price for our wheat. It's whatever it is that day. So because there's a lack of competition among the farmers, then they're willing to share, and what's worked for them, they will tell you. And in the ag industry, they're very willing to share what they have learned. Sometimes they're failures, but you can learn from those too.
I do want to ask Brittany one question. What did Dr. Farrell always say?
Get it in writing.
Could you hear what she said?
Get it in writing. If you have an agreement with your neighbors or friends or people in business, get it in writing. It may seem silly and it may seem crazy. And I went to a neighbor who's lived there his whole life, and his daddy was friends with my daddy, and his granddaddy was friends with my granddaddy. And I said, okay, whatever we agreed to on this summer crop needs to be in writing. He kind of looked at me and I said, it's as much for your protection as it is for mine. I don't want to get to the end of harvest and not know what's going on. So if you have agreements that you make sure to get it in writing. It may seem silly at the time, but if you ever need it, they're not going to be upset that they wrote it down with you.
Yes, thank you. We are a community and we like to help each other out, but you do need to have those things. So Dr. Shannon Farrell, ag lawyer, always tells the students, if you don't learn anything else from this class, get it in writing. What other questions do we have? Oh, there's got to be something else out there lingering. Nothing else? Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add with them, or?
Well, I guess maybe I can speak loud enough. Thank you for plugging Extension as a resource for folks who are looking for information. I think it's an undervalued service, and I know our Extension educators work tirelessly to help their communities. You've heard from some of them this week. So definitely use your Extension service. We are truly blessed in Oklahoma to have offices and presence in all 77 counties. 4-H is a great way that Extension showcases what it can do in its programming, but it does so much more. So anyone that's starting out or starting over, I would say definitely reach out to your educators in your counties and good advice. So thank you for mentioning.
And I will say those fact sheets, if you want to know fact sheets on a specific thing, you can search facts.okstate.edu is where they're combining all of those, moving all of those to digital. So even the old stuff has been put there. Just search that on the Oklahoma State website and you'll find a whole host of information there for all sorts of topics. I used it earlier this spring. We had wheat that had a certain disease and I needed to know how to dispose of the seed and found a fact sheet on it. So there's plenty of resources, even on things that aren't common.
And it's not just production agriculture. There are horticulture areas. There are many areas that you can search and find information. And in the counties, you have resources. You have resources at at Oklahoma State University. And I found out yesterday, I guess some of the resources at OSU OKC recently moved to another location, but we do have locations throughout the state, and they are there to help you. I had a hand up. Yes, Karen.
So I did think of one. The world is getting to be smaller through technology. How do you find social media in particular to be either a help or a hindrance to your farm or expanding your farming community or ag community?
I would say, as far as social media, it's really easy to send information out. Sometimes it falls on deaf ears, sometimes it doesn't. But you want to make sure that whatever you put out there about your farm is accurate, that you're not trying to skirt the truth or trying to stretch things. You want to make sure that what you portray is an accurate description of your farm and what you do, because that truthfulness that you show through your depiction of your farm is what others will value when they look for information about it. There is a huge downside to social media in that anybody can post something and it can go viral, whether that's true or not, and so you have to be careful. Also, if it's not true, that doesn't mean you have to share it and engage with it, because that just gets the word out even more. Even if you have a statement against whatever that is being posted, if you share it and somebody shares your share, it doesn't always take your comments that may have provided or shed some light on the situation. So don't always try and feel like you have to engage with something that's not accurate, because if you're not careful, you can just spread further what was inaccurate in the first place.
I do want to say something about that. I don't know, many of you saw Blaine Arthur yesterday who was here. She is our 4-H Foundation Director. And if you follow her on Facebook, instead of there was a very negative social media post about 4-H, about someone who did not understand 4-H at all. And instead of sharing that and giving her comment, Blaine Arthur and then some other people now have been putting the top reasons to be involved with 4-H and lessons learned with 4-H. And so if you have some of those experiences, I challenge you to go ahead and pull some of those pictures together or some of those stories together. Put those positive comments out there about the impact that 4-H or agriculture has had on your children's lives or your life and lessons learned, so that we can share the positive. We don't always need to be fighting against someone who is sharing negative material while reposting their material. Just like Brittany said, share the positives and lessons learned. Sorry.
I think the social media, Facebook posts, different things can be a way for us to connect with ag friends that we have that are clear across the state. I enjoy comments from the creek that's out west, Monty Tucker, and some of Shannon Farrell's things from Stillwater area. And so there's a lot there, an easy way to keep in touch with ag friends and what's going on their farm. And some of the things that I enjoy the most are just, what they were doing today. May have been in the lot or whatever, just a couple of pictures of what they were doing. But they're ag related and they're positive to be put out on social media. We are less than 1%, 1.5% if you, depending on how you crunch those numbers, of the population. But there's encouragement in seeing that other people are having a good day, and it might be muddy calf lots, but it's real life and they're enjoying it, and so that's an encouragement to me to be able to see what other people are doing on their farm, and that's something I would not be able to do without the social media. So.
I would probably have to say, if you are going to correct any of the information, not necessarily sharing that post, be sure and do it in a positive way, a way that's just informing and not attacking in any way, or any way could be perceived as you being negative towards that person that posted that information. And be very aware of the internet trolls. There's a lot of people out there that they just want to cause a problem, and when you kind of see that, it's probably best not to engage with that, because they're just trying to cause an issue at that point.
I'll say one more thing. On the misinformation side of agriculture that we see on social media, whatever people see first, if they have no idea, whatever they see first is what they're going to give more of a benefit of the doubt to. So when you come in, you have to be positive about your stance on something, because they're already skeptical of the second person to the fight. The first person, they saw it and it obviously caught their attention, but the second person, they may be a little more skeptical of, and if you have a negative part, they may dismiss you faster. But if you share your positive side of whatever issue is going on, they're a little more likely to understand your side of things and maybe consider your point of view.
Any other questions? I am sure that these ladies will be around for a little bit longer. I know they have businesses that they're running and lives that they have, but I'm sure if you want to ask them some quick questions later, you can do that. But please let us thank our panel members. You had some housekeeping, don't run out just yet, and I believe you have some chances to earn some more door prizes.
Thank you again to our panel. Thank you to our moderator. I think that was some really